Welcome to Wind Down Wednesday. Here are your hosts, Jeffrey Tobias Halter and Amanda Hammett.
I'm Jeff Halter, and thank you for joining us. During Black History Month, this is part two of a conversation with Minda Hart and the role each of us can play to forge and promote a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. One of the things I want to point out is, even though these are individual podcasts, take these back to your team. They're designed to be short. Listen to them for 10 minutes and then talk about the content for the next 50 minutes. This is designed to be actionable. And so all of our podcasts are designed to take back to the workplace. So I just wanted to put that out there, especially during Black History Month, when sometimes it can be a little awkward. How do we start this conversation? Hey, let's listen to a podcast and let's talk about it. So today, welcome back. And I'm drinking a Alexander Valley Cabernet and enjoying that, 2017. Amanda, what's your beverage of choice today?
Well, I had to clean up my act a little bit today. I'm just down with regular water, just cleansing the system a little bit.
I get to relax a little bit more than you do.
Well, it is my absolute honor to welcome back today's guest, Minda Hart, for part two of her conversation with us. If you did not listen to her last week, please, after you wrap up this episode, go back, listen to last week. She provided some phenomenal points for leaders to really take in this topic and really take it to their team and what can they do to support women of color. But we're going to dive into even more today. So Minda is a workplace and equity consultant. She is also the best-selling and award-winning author of The Memo, What Women of Color Need to Know to Secure a Seat at the Table. Her second book, Right Within, How to Heal from Racial Trauma in the Workplace, was released in October of 2021. And now her third book, because apparently she's not busy enough, her third book, You Are More Than Magic for Young Adults, will be released in the spring of 2022. She is a professor at NYU Wagner and a frequent guest on MSNBC and featured on ABC, Forbes, Fast Company, and Time Magazine. Minda is a highly sought after speaker for companies such as Liberty Mutual, American Family Insurance, Nike, Google, and Salesforce. And in 2020, Minda was named the top voice for equity in the workplace by LinkedIn. Minda hosts a weekly podcast called Secure the Seat.
Minda, welcome back to Wind Down Wednesday. We're so excited to have you able to join us again. And what is your wind down beverage of choice today?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm still sipping on that tea. Trying to cleanse, trying to live my best healthy life.
Cheers.
Good for you. I guess I got to get some water and tea.
All right. So in our earlier segment, we talked about what led you to write the memo and your new book, Right Within. And we spent time talking about the role of managers. But today I'd really like to talk about how do we create an inclusive environment? How do we create that culture in an entire organization? Could you share your thoughts with us on how do we create it? And then how do we cultivate and nurture an inclusive environment?
Yeah, Amanda, that's a great question. Again, thank you guys for having me back. I really think a lot about this. People say, what keeps you up at night? And how do we make the workplace work for everybody? I know we're talking about, it's Black History Month, and Black women and women of color. But if we're solving for equity, then that means the workplace works for everybody, all of us on this podcast right now. And so part of that is understanding that we might work at the same place, but we don't experience that workplace the same. And so for those who don't experience it, as well as others, what questions do we need to ask? What solutions do we need to provide so that people at least feel safe enough to say, hey, I'm not experiencing this the right way? And when I think about my career in corporate America, oftentimes I didn't feel that psychological safety to be able to address some of the issues I was experiencing without feeling that I might get fired or be, put in the basement, in the movie Office Space, I was scared, right? And I think how do we create that environment? We have to really be intentional about creating safe spaces, not just saying it, but actually walking it out and demonstrating what safety actually looks like.
mean, it's been over 2 years since George Floyd, and a lot of companies came out with grandiose commitments to improve racial equality, and some have hit the mark and others haven't. Can you talk about who really lived up to their commitment? If we look at big organizations or even small ones, who's doing it well? And I'll let this be your option. You may not want to use their company name, but who missed the mark?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I definitely won't, call anybody out per se, but what I will say is there was a report that came out over the summer, and it said that they interviewed Black employees, and over half, 50% of Black employees felt as though they belonged for the first time at their company working from home. So if you let that sink in just a bit, over half of Black employees didn't feel like they belonged till they worked from home. And so think about companies. If you're missing the mark, if you're not creating solutions that make your Black employees want to come back to work, right? They don't have to deal with some of those same inequalities that they were experiencing before. And so instead of saying, come back on, June 10th, what are we doing to create space and safety so that our employees who were experiencing trouble and harm before come back into a better environment, not a normal environment? And so those companies who are hitting the mark are those who are asking their employees who have experienced trauma of any sort or discrimination, what do you need to do the best work of your career? Those are the companies that are making sure that diversity metrics are tied to executive bonuses, right? There's some companies that are doing that. And so I think we have to have revolutionary solutions to create the space and safety that we all say we want. And so those companies that are just talking about it, but there's no demonstration, they're the ones that are going to have a hard time retaining and recruiting diverse talent going forward.
That was a lot. But that's something everybody needs to hear, because what I keep hearing, and Jeffrey, I'm sure you're hearing the same thing, is when are things going to get back to normal? Normal for who? For who? So, all right, as we wrap up this second episode, again, so much good stuff has come out of this, and this is a very short episode. I really do want to talk for just a second about your most recent book, Right Within. You actually outline a process to find mental and emotional freedom from racialized oppression at work. Now, this was primarily written for women of color, but I kind of think it's relevant for every person who experiences a mental swirl from being excluded or disrespected in the workplace. Would you mind sharing that framework and on how to see yourself and how you want to see yourself rather than how other people stereotype you and how other people see you? Would you mind sharing that?
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. I think it's really important, and I'm glad that you said this, and I know we're coming close to time, but again, how are people experiencing the workplace? What is normal, right? What's normal for you may not be normal for the next person. And if I've been one of the only in the workplace for a very long time, I've experienced some type of trauma. So be it sexism, ageism, right? Homophobia, however you might identify, everybody's experienced some type of trauma in the workplace. And we don't want to continue to traumatize people because that creates patterns of abuse. And I know no workplace wants to create that. And so knowing that some of our employees have experienced discrimination in some way, shape, or form, we first have to acknowledge that these things have happened, right? Because we can't solve what we can't confront. And I think for so long in the workplace, we've said, oh no, racism doesn't exist here. This doesn't exist here. And it's like, wait a second, two things can be true at the same time. You may never have experienced it, but somebody else might experience it every single day. So what are we going to do? Not demonize anybody, but what solutions do we need? Do we need consultants to come in and help us? Do our managers need conflict resolution or mediation training, right? Because at the core of it, we want to heal the workplace, and Right Within is a book for everybody. As a manager, how do we build trust with our colleagues, right? When we might have said, Jeffrey mentioned earlier that a lot of companies made a lot of declarations on racial justice, but have not cashed in on that. They're just talking about it. So if you have some trust that has been broken, what do we need to do to rebuild, right? It means acknowledge and be transparent. Yes, we said these things and we haven't demonstrated it, but you know what? Now here's what we're doing moving forward. And if at any point you feel like we're not hitting the mark, we have an open door policy. Shoot us an email. Let us know how we can be helpful. Like, let's create that dialogue. And I think that's the part that heals the workplace, and we can eliminate some of this bad behavior that has gone rampant to create toxic environments.
Well, Minda, the time always seems to go so quickly. I'd be remiss as a host if I didn't ask you to just talk briefly about your new book that's coming out. You Are More Than Magic for Young Adults. I know it's going to be released. Can you give us an update on that, and just what's in it and what led you to write it?
Oh, I'm so excited about this book. I thought that I couldn't get any more excited about my other books, to be fair, but I think about all the young Black and brown girls who need the tools to let them know that, you know what, you can have a difficult conversation. You belong, even if you are the only one in your classroom, or if you have a certain situation arise with your teacher or a coach, here's how you can have a conversation about that, right? And I think sometimes we just don't have the tools to be able to engage with people who look like us or don't look like us. But the other part of this book is about self-esteem, Jeffrey and Amanda, but it's also written from a perspective of, if you are a parent, let's say a white parent, for example, how do you engage your young audience, your students or your kids or those that you provide care for, how to engage with their colleagues and their students of colors in their classroom, right? And so I'm bringing this conversation to say, let's create a culture of allyship in junior high school, in high school, right? So when we get to our age, we already have the tools to be able to see each other and engage with each other and humanize each other's experiences. And let's not wait till we get in our 30s and our 40s and to solve for things.
And it's too late. Yeah. Do we have a release date?
April 5th. So it's available right now on pre-order. And my hope is that we have a very nationwide conversation so that we can make sure that we're creating the next generation of people who belong and who are allies for their peers.
Well, Minda, thank you for your time. We are certainly going to have you back on after the book comes out. We want to spend some time talking about that. For our listeners, you can learn more about Minda at mindaharts.com. You can download the Women of Color Equity Initiative. We're going to post that link on our website. You can find Minda's books at your favorite bookseller. But on behalf of Amanda and myself, we just want to thank you for taking time. I know how busy you are this month. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again for joining us for Wind Down Wednesdays, a contemporary midweek discussion on current workplace and marketplace issues with a focus on diversity, inclusion, intersectionality, and equality. I'm Amanda Hammett, and on behalf of myself and Jeffrey Tobias Halter, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for joining us for Wind Down Wednesday. If you like this episode, please subscribe to receive more episodes straight to your inbox.